Welcome to Adapter's Advantage, breakthrough moments that lead to success. Our podcast brings you insider stories of the moments that mattered, turning points on the sometimes rocky road to success. Here's your host, Mark Magnacca, president and co-founder of Allego, the workforce training and readiness platform built for distributed teams.
Hello, this is Mark Magnacca, and on behalf of the Adapter's Advantage podcast, I want to welcome our next guest, Ami Tully Lotka. Amy and I go back more than a decade in terms of our work together, and she's got a really unique background. She co-founded Maximum Impact Partners with her husband, John Lotka, and she's been working in the financial services industry in a wide range of roles since 1982. She was part of the inbound sales desk at Nuveen Investments. Then she spent years as a regional wholesaler. She was a key account manager. And then she served as the national director for the independent dealer division for Nuveen. Later, working for Fidelity in what became the Fidelity Advisor Funds and building a sales team from scratch. In addition to all the work that she's done in the US, Amy's also spent a lot of time internationally. So she's got a really interesting perspective, not to mention having a degree from Indiana University, where it can only be said that you've learned a lot about the management skills from some of the great coaches of all time. So with that, Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mark.
So glad to have you here. We have so much to catch up on. I want to start off with one question that I know you've gotten before, but given all the different things that the Maximum Impact Partners do, and in particular that you and John do for your clients, how do you answer the question, what do you do?
So what we do at Maximum Impact Partners is we help salespeople make deeper and better connections with their clients. Across the board, that's really what we do. We're always helping our clients improve and make connections with their clients to be better and more meaningful.
Well, if you think about it, that's such a unique element of the financial services business where having that deep relationship matters. And there are many other industries where it is a much more transactional business, but the business that you've pretty much grown up in and seen a lot of evolution in over that period of time is one where those deep relationships really make a difference.
It's the only difference, Mark. It's the only differentiator. And as I've been in this business for a long time to know that at one point we had products that differentiated us. We have a product that was better than another. I started out selling municipal bonds, and 05 would get you the sale, like an improvement. So now we've really come into the place where we don't have a product differentiator. We don't have either features or benefits that are differentiators because they can be replicated. And we really are down to what is in many commodities. The differentiator is a salesperson that represents them. And it's the ultimate relationship sale. And that salespeople really have to deepen and understand that because they're professional tiebreakers. They are out making the difference. And I ask all the time, do you have a competitor? Are there competitors out there that if an advisor chose that product, that they would be injured or hurt or not served by that product? And people say, no, actually, no.
Right.
No one's going to be hurt by. So how do you make a decision when you've got not just two good options, you've really got 10, 100 good options?
Right.
The relationship is what breaks the deal. All ties break to who I know better. And no, not who I know better, but who really feels understood and which of my clients really feels that I'll take care of them. Who feels best about the context of our company, our product, and my own personal knowledge of you. I care about you. So I'm going to get the deals time. They're going to break my way.
You know, what's so interesting, Amy, what you just described for some personality types who really assess the world in a purely logical sense, what you just said is so hard in some ways for certain people to understand, because it's hard to imagine that it doesn't come down to a quantitative, mathematical sort of difference. But as you and I both have experienced in this industry, in many cases, the products are either identical or very, very close to identical. And that last part, it wasn't what you just described there, not just that they had a better relationship, but what that meant was really a deep understanding and almost an empathy around understanding where this person is coming from and what they're trying to accomplish, and that piece becomes the differentiator rather than the product.
It's so true. And, we do see it with models now that really are so quantitative, and that, you'll say that in some sophisticated environments where you've got teams of advisors and an enormous amount of quantitative data, that there isn't a decision that's made by a machine. So we have some machine decision making, but even the machine comes up with two good options.
It's a great point. So let me pivot, Amy, from that to this idea of what do you enjoy most about what you do?
Oh man, I love what I do so much. I am so lucky I really like working with other, with business people who have a high energy and a high motivation. I mean, feel like so fortunate every single day. When I shifted gears actually and started Maximum Impact Partners, and I had audiences of people who were other wholesalers, key account managers, and salespeople who I really knew and could connect with. And so open-minded, so wanting to be better, so committed to having a conversation and like rolling up your sleeves. What does it take to be better? That's so energizing. It is there's so much knowledge that is represented in my clients. Everything that they know, it's all inside of them. And what I love most is just like unleashing what they already know.
Yeah.
And like getting them to like really feel fully empowered. I mean, to me, I can't believe I get to do that, because it seems like it's simple. Like, I can't believe I get to do that.
So Amy, as some people are listening to you and they can hear the enthusiasm in your voice, you've been doing this a long time. You and I have shared the stage in so many different times. And what I can vouch for, the fact is, even the nights that you came in on a red eye, or you were working 5 days straight, in front of a group, you'd show up in the morning and be able to emit that kind of energy. And I think, now more than ever, people are attracted to that kind of energy, where the person just seems to be enjoying what they're doing, and you want to be a part of it. And so, we're going to talk a little bit more about that skill set, and even that skill set as it relates to being in this more virtual world that we're experiencing now. But first, I want to ask you about one unique element of your business that may be of interest, and that is around the fact that you and your business partner, you're not only business partners, but you're also husband and wife. What do you believe has been the common denominator to make it work, where you are both married and in business together?
Wow. And that's just like, there's so much in that. Like, that's probably enough content for a book. but
I think there have been books on that topic. Yeah.
But I would say, like, if we go back to the beginning, first of all, John and I always worked together. I met him, he was chief marketing officer at Nuveen, and I ran one of the distribution divisions there. And I think all of us can relate to the war that exists oftentimes between sales and marketing. And I've joked to say that there's one way to solve the differences between sales and marketing, and that's just marry each other. And, but we did have the advantage of an enormous amount of respect for each other as professionals. We also have a yin and yang look, which I also knew already existed. John sees things from a methodical, more analytical, and a step-by-step way of like what actually needs to be done, and I have more of a high communication, more creativity, and we come together in a way that I think is a really good match. But as far as being married to each other, And, I love being in business with John, and, business partnerships fail at a very high rate. Actually, they fail at a higher rate than marriages. And when we
Which is a pretty high rate.
which is also a high rate. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's a 60% rate of failures for business partnerships. So when we started the business, one commitment that we made to each other was that a good marriage was a higher value for us than a good business.
That's great.
And that we had to really keep course correcting on that all over the course of the last 22 years, keep course correcting to make sure, are we still honoring that the higher value is our marriage, and our family it's our higher value. And that really, the course corrections really lead you to what I think is the ultimate secret of having a business partner. And that is to have a good divide and conquer strategy, to know very clearly who's responsible for what.
That's a
Stay out of
great
each
point.
other's sandboxes, have each other's backs, but know who does what.
What have you seen as the biggest challenge in your business that you've had to adapt to since the start of COVID-19?
Well, the challenge is that there's a lot of hurt, like there's a lot of hurt out there. There's a lot of fear. And I think the biggest challenge has been stepping up in a way that, how can we help our clients through this? The business challenge ultimately is that so much of what we do is a face-to-face connection, and converting a face-to-face connection to be equally valid and have equal amount of power, but not be in the same room as each other. So the shift to virtual has been the biggest change. The biggest challenge, though, is the same challenge it was before we had COVID, Mark. It's I can always seem to get 15 pounds of sugar into a 10-pound bag. I mean, it's just the overcommitment. And because now you don't have travel time, which was the time that I took to regroup and think about what's next, I literally now will look at my calendar and think, oh my gosh, that next meeting starts in 2 minutes.
I know. Isn't it amazing that talk about work expands the time allotted to it?
Yes.
Almost everybody listening had some form of a commute, and now they don't have that commute, but they're still busy sort of back to back.
It's, I think that we've never put enough emphasis on our thinking time and our regroup and energy, the level of energy. And this has really, for a challenge for me, has really caused me to now have to go back after all of these weeks and think about the way I'm scheduling things, to allow myself both not only to be prepared, and I'm prepared from a content standpoint, but really to be prepared from an energy standpoint, to give yourself that, you have to invent now and install what was the ride up the elevator, to breathe in and breathe out. The walk through the airport, to breathe in and breathe out, and to anticipate and think about, the next client that you're going to be working with. And I now have to put that in. So I think that the biggest challenge for me in my business has always been overcommitting, given the amount of time that I've got. I think that there's probably a lot of people who would be listening to this podcast who would just call yourselves guilty. You overcommit.
No, it's a great point. What do you see as the biggest change that's happened for your business when you've moved to this virtual training model?
I think the change actually is in the engagement, that how you engage and how you learn. And I have to say, Mark, I learned this, the first time I learned this lesson of efficiency in communication was when I took the Impact Selling Program to Japan. And I didn't share language with anyone. And so because I didn't share a language and everything I was saying was translated, I had to be really efficient in what I said so that the learners, the audience, could learn things. And I had to turn things over to them so they could discuss things.
Right.
And I learned that that's where the greatest learning happened. It was when the right questions were asked and they could learn from each other. And this lesson has come back to me through this period of time, that the changeover in terms of learning is to know that I may have scheduled an all-day meeting with a group of people for a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And in a face-to-face environment, I would just pray that I could keep their attention for the whole day. But you know that you really don't.
Right.
Well, in a Zoom environment, you have to pull the efficiency of that down into really narrow, much smaller bites, where you've got an idea that you present and a discussion for the group, so that it's very interactive. And without that interaction, there is exhaustion, and we just can't pay attention for that long. And you and I have debated this for a long time, because you've said, we're all moved. Nobody learns anything unless you can learn it on a 3-minute YouTube video. And and I've argued, no, people listen to me for like 8 hours, and you're like, they're not learning anything.
Right. Well, and the beauty of it, Amy, is that, certainly not everything can be done in 3 minutes, but the point you made earlier, the preparing for it and thinking about how to create a dynamic where really what people want is to learn from their peers when at all possible. Right. So the structure and the framework that, and with using technology to put people in a separate Zoom room, giving them a question to discuss with their peers, you can actually do so much of what we did by flying everybody together. You can do in this environment.
It's absolutely, positively not only doable, I believe it's better. I really do.
I hadn't even thought about this until we just started talking about it, but I was at Marconi Beach on Cape Cod, and it's called Marconi Beach because Enrico Marconi sent the first wireless signal from this beach overseas. And then later the Marconi wireless was used on ships all over the world, and actually was what the Titanic used to signal that they were sinking. Well, the reason I bring that up is when you think about both wireless communication from the early 1900s and then even the telephone, there were so many people in that time, and granted the shift didn't happen as quickly as this one did, but that were used to just face-to-face. The only thing the world knew was face-to-face communications or a telegram, right? That was it. And the idea that you were going to call someone and just use your voice rather than meet with them face-to-face. But then over time, the same kind of breakthrough happened in this realization, which is, man, the phone is so efficient versus riding my horse to go see that person, right? And then realizing they're not home.
Right.
So I think that those kinds of ahas are starting to happen in this environment. And again, we'll filter out the things like the special dinner out or the special concert that you want to see. I think we'll find a way to do it, but maybe in a different pace than what had happened previously.
I think we're heading to better, Mark. I really do.
Yeah. I think that, it remains to be seen, but there's a lot that we're learning from this time that I think will serve us. And that's a great segue to, one of the things you were just talking about, and I've seen you do this in both the live and the virtual world, but for people listening, what are some of the techniques that you've learned to be able to build rapport with a virtual audience, given that you have a limited amount of time on most calls?
Well, one is, this is another lesson I learned in Japan. When you ask a question to an audience in Japan, no one answers you. And I found this to be, it was challenging as a facilitator, asking a question and then trying to get the audience to respond in some way. And I asked my translator, and she said that it's not polite to speak up. So I learned a lesson from that, and I apply it here, and I would say this is really something we get. We all talk over each other, and we've all been on those Zoom calls where you start and stop.
Right.
So as a facilitator, I tell people when we start, I'm going to call on you specifically.
Right.
Because that is going to give some energy to the discussion. And you can say that you have nothing to add, and I'll move on to someone else. but I'm going to ask individual people to respond to questions. And I think that is one part of both engaging and keeping people alert. They don't know. This isn't intended to point a finger at them in any way,
Right.
because not at all. On the other hand, if you're having a discussion and you think that the facilitator at any moment in time is going to say, Mark, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. It changes things.
It changes things. And it also changes the person who's in the room, and you've had them, Mark, the one who takes up all the space in the room.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to call on you, answer when I call on you. I'll unmute you.
Right. Right. Wouldn't it have been great to have that in the live class?
Yes.
You're on mute right now.
Yes, you're muted.
Yeah.
But that I think that's one technique. And the other technique is to keep the audience small in a Zoom call.
Mm-hmm.
So unless it really is just a presentation, and I did a webinar last week, I think there were 600 people on it, and it was just me speaking. So it was a webinar and everyone's listening. Okay, that's okay.
Right.
But real engagement is you've got 10, max 15 people on a Zoom call,
right,
where you're going to be learning something, discussing it. I'll be asking pointed questions. I will be putting up a poll. I'll be moving you into Zoom rooms to have short discussions, meaning 5 minutes. Because I would have broke in face-to-face, I break people out for 15 minutes of discussion. On Zoom, 5.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of these things are, it actually, probably even face-to-face, I could have done it in 5.
Now I want to pivot to this terrific idea that you've brought from the world of football into the world of sales. And I know you call it the combine. So can you explain what is the combine and why has it been so effective for your clients?
The combine is, we call it the combine because when we witnessed in watching the NFL combine that the players all get together and so do all of the coaches. And all the coaches get to put eyes on players. And they don't see them, they see them just simply run through specific skill drills.
Right.
And all the drills are exactly the same. And all of the coaches are putting their eyes on exactly the same. And in witnessing this, I really could see that the sales management component in our clients, they never really get to see talent in that way. They don't get to put their eyes on talent running through individual skill drills.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that sales managers, if I call them the coaches in the equation, they are actually looking at their own team members and they look at them through a different lens. They're saying, oh, well, he usually runs that 40 faster. Typically, I see him run that 40 faster.
Right.
And I'm saying, you don't have to put your eyes on, like, we're running everybody through the drill. And on the day of the combine, your score is how did you run the 40 that day?
That's right.
Not how do you run it on average over the course of your career, but how do you run it on that day? And so this actually became in the commitment to continuous improvement. There is a requirement that the coaches identify the skills that are critical, and that in order for the players to be really good and successful, they have to be good at these specific skills. So the coaches have to identify the critical skills and know what good looks like.
Right.
And without knowing what good, you can't know what good looks like unless you see that skill expressed across many different people, not just your own.
Yep.
So that's really where this comes from. And I feel like the combine has illuminated this entire concept of what real coaching is, because managers know that they have to get to the goal. They know that that there's metrics that they have to meet. There's all kinds of things that managers are managing all the time. But when it comes to coaching, they really make the assumption that, like, let's say everybody needs to be better at presentation skills. And they, like, in order to be better as a sales team, we're going to apply this solution and you're all going to go through presentation skills training, when really only 20% of the team needs it.
Right.
So if you don't look at the drill, if you don't look at presentation skills and score everybody across exactly the same drill, you're going to waste a lot of money on presentation skills for people that don't need that and need something else.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the segue that I wanted to ask you about, given you're an industry recognized expert on territory management. Using that as an example, there are some people who are good at this and some people that aren't. What's changed around the way people demonstrate how they manage a territory in this virtual world versus when they were doing the actual kind of milk run?
Well, now they know. Actually, Mark, I've been saying for a long time that in our industry, we've been calling people hybrids, and I've told sales managers for a long time, it's been my soapbox. It's not hybrid. It is the way it should be done.
Right.
And now, we have such a habit of milk run that we can't get ourselves off the juice of a milk run. We just can't stop doing that. Now we've been force fed the world of what we've been calling hybrid wholesaling. And that is continuous, real connections with an agenda, for a meeting that's going to happen. And it's either going to be via Zoom, we're either going to be face-to-face or on the phone, but I can show you documents, we can run through things. There's really nothing that's different except that I can be more efficient. And then when required, like I've even seen in the last couple of months, big retirement plan services companies have large closing presentations with 15 people in the room, virtual, and get it done.
Yeah.
So, this is nothing actually changes except there is more efficiency. And most firms have experience in what they call the hybrid model. It's just that their entire external sales force are now in that model. And I think I'd be curious if there are any sales managers who listen to this podcast who've actually witnessed this, that I've seen the internal external sales team become much more integrated into who they're calling on, who's doing what.
Right.
Instead of like the internal is going to take 300 relationships and the external is going to take 100. Now they're taking all 400 and they can pivot. Like there's much more of an opportunity to really help advisors who really need a lot of help right now.
Right. I want to pivot from that concept to your experience at Stanford, because you've been participating in a class online yourself. And can you just talk a little bit about what your experience has been in terms of learning and what you've learned in this online forum?
Yeah, actually, it's been so great. It's so great to be the student, and to be exposed to such, good thinking and, great ideas coming from university, from professors, et cetera. The experience has been that when you watch the way other people teach, you learn how to be a better teacher.
Sure.
And Stanford has set up this series of online learning that really kind of follows the same sort of thing, Mark, that you've been building at Lego and that we've been talking about for a long time. It's a concept. It's a setup by the professor to discuss the concept, compelling, ideas, and then a video to watch. And in the video, there's some evidence and some good information. Then there's an activity, something you have to go do.
Right.
And so it's actually not onerous at all.
On your own or with?
You do it on your own. Yeah. And you can, pull in a team of people who you do it together with, but you have to have the experience and you come back and talk about the experience you had in the activity. Mm-hmm. So it's not onerous. It's not writing papers or, doing the research yourself. It's actually tapping into the experience you have of applying the ideas that come out of, what's in here. And because this is all done online, it can spread out over time. So we're going to learn one lesson over the course of 7 days.
Yep.
And so every day for 7 days, we're going to take 30 minutes to learn something. And your commitment at Stanford is to engage in all aspects of that. How fabulous is that?
Yeah.
And it does teach you, as a teacher myself, like a facilitator and a teacher, a coach, a consultant myself, learning how I learn and how engagement looks like. It's really fascinating. And yeah, I really love to go back to college. I actually think that now I would get
Now
it.
you can appreciate it, right?
Yeah, now I would get it. Yeah.
So Amy, I've got just two more questions. And one of the things I think about how much the business has changed since you were first on the sales desk in 1982. And I know that you're a part of a number of women's groups and sort of paying attention to some of the unique challenges and opportunities for women. What in your role as a mentor and helping to connect women in financial services, both in the retirement plan space and other parts of the business as they develop their careers, what would you say is the biggest challenge that exists right now as they try to adapt in this new environment?
Well, Mark, I think that there's more good news for women in this environment because work from home is a better alternative for professional women. Because as professional women, we don't need a lot of time at home. We need a little bit of time.
Right.
We need a little bit of time. We need time to let someone in the door. We
Yeah.
need, time to let the plumber in. We need time. Our children are handled, as professional women, we have, if you've got little kids, you have a solution for that. But being home when they get home from school is, it doesn't take away from your day. Actually, it adds to your day. There's so much about it that's just better. And I've always thought that there's a lot of autonomy that comes in a wholesaling role. And as when I was a wholesaler, I never had children, but I did have a lot of autonomy. And I have always appreciated and wanted to have that kind of autonomy. But the way that I think about opportunities expanding for women now, it's not just sales roles that have more autonomy. And it is all roles that have autonomy, that your life, the ability to stay true to your values, to have your family be in the number one spot,
Right.
without ever taking anything away from your contribution to your company. I mean, I don't know any professionals who are thinking, how can I steal time from the company to spend more time with my family? No, you're thinking about, how do I achieve all the things that I want to achieve in business?
So as you described this, maybe there will be a new shift and a realization that for some people, and in particular, some women who thought, I can't do that kind of role because I can't be away on an airplane or whatever the case might be, which, by the way, men may have felt the same way, but just the cultural dynamic that was at hand somehow made it easier for men to get on the plane and go.
Right.
But now in this environment, I hadn't really thought about the fact that it's actually creating flexibility for both men and women that didn't really exist before. That's a great spot as we wrap up here. As you know, I have a phrase that I love to use called "now what?" And
Right.
so of all the things we've talked about, what's the one thing that you want to leave our listeners with based on what we've discussed, the one thing that you'd recommend that they do based on the tough subjects that we've covered in this conversation?
Well, this is the power is in the people in your organization, and that people make contributions to your organization across the board. The whole person comes in. It isn't just their skills. It's their whole person actually makes a contribution to the organization. And if I said, now what, I'd say we really have to look at and understand that it's not the building you work in. It's not the office environment. The culture that you create as a leader is all about the people first, people before numbers. And I think that this actually leads to better numbers. And that's where continuous improvement, continuous higher levels of performance, it's all coming from people watching people connecting better with people. It's about the people.
Amy, for people who want to learn more about you or Maximum Impact Partners or the work that your company does, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Reaching me through email is good, Amy, AMI at gotimpact.com. I'd love to hear from anyone and start a conversation. Linking in with me on LinkedIn is also awesome. And our website is gotimpact.com.
Kind of like got milk, but got
Got milk, got impact. Yeah. So that's all of those ways are great ways to reach me.
Well, I want to say it's just a pleasure talking with you, and so great to see your energy continuing to work its magic in the virtual realm, just as it did in the live one.
Thanks, Mark. Back at you. You're that guy.
Great talking with you, Amy. Thank you.
You too, Mark. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week on Adapters Advantage, available on all major podcast platforms. Make sure you visit our website, allego.com, where you can subscribe to our podcast so you'll never miss an episode. If you liked this show, you might want to check out our virtual training kit to learn how to keep a remote team running at full speed. Go to allego.com/virtual to download your kit today. Be sure to tune in for our next episode. And don't forget, one new idea can change your life.